Hi guys, and welcome to Beth Ramsden Crafts. I'm Beth, and this week I'm going to be sculpting something spooky for Halloween, but not a pumpkin. Here in Bonnie, Scotland, it's traditional to carve a turnip instead. They are a lot harder to carve, and some people joke that you need to start carving them in the summer for them to be ready for Halloween. So I thought I would carve one using polymer clay. It will last many years and it won't end up going mouldy. The tiny clay pumpkins I featured at the end of my last video reminded me how much I enjoyed making them, so here we go. I've put together a Pinterest board of reference and I've looked out all my bits of polymer clay. I've chosen some small scraps and some really old blocks to mush together. I add a little bit of baby oil as I roll them together to soften them, as some of them are really crumbly. All the colours together make this green, and it should be plenty for what I'm doing today. Now I'll be starting with a foil ball in the centre. This will give it a hollow in the middle and it will save me clay. Just keep adding foil until it's big enough. It needs to be bigger for me than this LED candle that I'll be putting inside. I also flatten the bottom of the foil ball so the candle will have a level base to sit on inside. Now the next thing is to cover this foil ball in clay. I'm tearing off a chunk at a time, pressing it out with my fingers and then smoothing it on. Not pressing it too hard into every wrinkle of the foil, but I'm trying to smooth out the joins as much as possible. If you had a pasta roller, then you could roll your clay through this and get a nice even thickness and sheets of clay for doing this. I'm going to mark out a line where I'm going to cut a lid of sorts off of, although the lid will be on the bottom of the turnip, as in some of the reference I saw. So I just need to draw a perfectly level line to follow. Or it can be completely squint, and I'll have to just level that out and make it work. I'm kind of emphasizing this cut line because I'm going to bake the clay before I actually cut this part off. Fortunately, I realized that my little oven that I use to bake clay in is quite small and I won't be able to fit anything larger than this ball in it. I'm going to separate it and then be able to bake each half individually. Here it is baked, and now I'm going to use a Faber-Castell aqua pencil, a watercolour pencil, just because it will show up nicely on the clay. You could use anything really. And I'm going to mark out some face features so that I can cut them out with this scalpel afterwards. Just keeping it very basic. Triangle eyes and a few sharp teeth. And now I'm going to carefully cut through the clay with this scalpel. The clay is not very thick, so this was quite easy, just taking care to get into all the corners with the knife before pulling out the little shapes. And we can see the foil underneath. Onto the mouth, and being careful as I cut around the teeth, being careful not to snap any of the teeth off. And the last piece now. There we go. Next, I'm going to follow the line that I'd made earlier. I will be adding clay on top of this, so it's not needing to look too pretty so far. There we go, nice and satisfying. And now I'm just going to peel away all the foil and pull it out from the inside, being very careful not to crush being careful not to crush the turnip as I go. Getting some nice big chunks out. Now keep this for later. You can always use this foil again for a future sculpture. Just cover it in fresh foil if you need to. And there we go. Now I'm just going to double check that my little light fits inside no problem. Oh yes, that's perfect. Now this is Fimo liquid. It acts like a glue of sorts for polymer clay. You bake it along with your clay and it makes it really easy to stick fresh clay onto already baked clay. So I'm using it in between here. And as I said, I'm going to add a layer of fresh clay to the outside of the whole turnip and carry on refining the shapes. So I can just sandwich this on and smooth out the edges. Again, you can use the liquid clay to kind of smooth out any parts you need. And I'm shaping what will be the root or the bottom tip of the turnip. And I'll stick that on here as well. And just roughly smooth it out with my fingers. There we go. And I'm using an old toothbrush here that I keep just for paint effects and sculpting. I'm just practicing. I think that will work nicely, just using a sculpting tool to make some wrinkles and some crevices. And I've covered the rest of the turnip with clay here, and I'm just roughly smoothing it out again. And I'll start to add texture again with the brush and redefine the features, all these cutouts, with my sculpting tool, just trying to make them nice and clear. Maybe add some wrinkly bits and alternating with the brush. So yeah, I just carry on texturing. I'm also using this rolled up tinfoil ball to add a different kind of texture. And I'm using the sculpting tool to emphasize the teeth. I end up pretty much scraping off the clay from the teeth that I already had underneath, just to create a bit of depth. Here I'm just pushing and refining the gum line a little more, or the teeth line. I'm also adding on a little more clay where I want to emphasize the shape and kind of smoothing it in again. And I can just use texture to blend that in. And here we go. I'm now using the toothbrush to kind of swipe and slide at the surface to kind of smooth it out. And with the sculpting tool again, emphasizing the stem on the top. Looking at my reference, it's really wrinkled and puckered around the stem at the top here. So I'm just trying to follow that reference as best as I can. Yeah, something like that. Looking better and better, a bit more realistic. I'm using the toothbrush, kind of smooths out any fingerprints. And now I'm using my tweezers to kind of pick and pinch at the edge of the stem here, which is roughing up the edge, making it look a bit more natural. And again, with the flat part of my sculpting tool, just kind of flattening out the really bumpy areas, trying to get it to look more turnip-like. And there we go, I think it's ready to bake. Okay, now that's baked, it's looking good and we've had no burning. Now I'm going to use this scalpel to neaten off some of the inside edges. Being nice and careful here, don't cut too deeply. I don't mind the tinfoil texture that you can see on the inside here, but you could smooth clay over this or flatten it out the foil before you add clay to it if you don't like this effect. Now I'm using the scalpel to clean up some of these features as well, just to sharpen these internal edges. And in the edges of the mouth as well, just make sure got nice open holes. I can bevel off some of these teeth. Now then, there we go. Now I'm using a hand drill to carefully make some holes. This will be for my string to go through. So it's going to go through the bottom, holding it to the top so that I can hang up the turnip. Unlike a pumpkin, which has a nice flat base, the turnip has a shaped bottom, and so it looks best hung up. And I'm going to start with small holes and then come back with a larger size drill to widen them out for the string later on. There we go. Okay, I think we're ready for some paint. Now I'm starting off with the airbrush here. I thought I would do a base coat of a kind of dark beige colour as my undercoat, which is all fine, but after my first coat I remembered it would probably take a few layers to build up the amount of colour that I need, so I actually switched back to just painting on paint to get an even layer on underneath, which you can see here, quite a sort of dark beigey undercoat colour. Just using cadmium yellow, burnt umber and a buff titanium acrylic paint. Next, using processed magenta and purple acrylic mixed with thinner, I put this in the airbrush and I can start to build up the proper turnip colour. Airbrushing it on, but leaving the bottom part that nice creamy colour like normal turnips. I really like that gradient they have around the middle. And here we go, looking a bit more realistic. And I've decided to paint the inside of the turnip as well, so I'm preparing it with a little bit of white gesso first. While that's drying, I'm going to use this antiquing medium to darken and age the turnip. You can use normal acrylic for this, just diluted in water more than usual. You paint it on and wipe it off, leaving the colour in all the cracks and crevices. You can see me using this technique in my Crochet a Succulent video with acrylic paint. It's a really effective tool for knocking back and really highlighting the texture. I did think that I was recording the process, but I must have missed the record button because it's vanished. So here's how it looks afterwards. It's even more realistic. The inside is now painted a yellowy cream colour, and I'm mixing up some off-white for some dry brushing. Just use a rough brush, wipe off as much excess paint as you can, and swipe the brush over the surface, so the paint will only stick to the highest points, and this helps to emphasize your detail. I think it's looking really good. it's looking nice. Now I just need some string, so I'm poking it through the holes and tying knots, and I'm going to add some watery paint just lightly brushed on to the string to kind of discolour it and knock back the whiteness of it. I've also roughed up the ends of these knots as well. So here we go, the discoloured string. I've also added on a little knot onto the string so it's kind of adjustable, adds a little bit of visual interest as well. Now I've put some string lights inside just for it to show up in the daytime because these are a lot brighter. But in the dark, at night time, this LED candle will be plenty of light and it looks really great. So before I leave you with some final shots, I've just got this Vallejo matte varnish, which you can use with an airbrush or you can brush it on. I want to test this out as I plan to use it on my next customised Blythe doll. I've had spray cans of varnish clog up on me before, and I'm hoping the airbrush will be more reliable. It's lovely to spray on and it's really easy to add just a little at a time with the dropper. I will do another test before my next custom doll to see how it looks on the face, but I'm really happy with this and how matte it is when it's dry. So here is my finished spooky turnip. He is lovely and creepy, and of course traditionally Scottish. I'm glad he'll last many years. I remember when I was a wee girl trying to carve a turnip for school. It was not easy. As always, thank you for watching. Do like and subscribe if you haven't already, because it really helps my channel to be seen on its long road to monetization. Have a safe and happy Halloween, and I'll see you next time. Bye!